At this time, we're going to open it up to questions that we've just received from the audience. And Mr. Stewart will begin with you, Mara.
All right, great. So right now, because of policies by SRP and APS, it is difficult for new city solar installations to break even. What is the right percent of money to lose to make solar still worth doing?
Right. Okay.
The right percent. You know, that's a great question, and I honestly can't. I will be honest. I can't say exactly what the right percent is at this time. I'd have to see a bunch of data on it. I do think we have to negotiate really hard right now with APS and SRP, and I do think that it's been difficult for residents, it's been difficult for cities, it's been difficult for businesses, and obviously this is something that has been coming up time and time again. And I think it just comes down to some really hard negotiations, some hard choices that's going to have to be made at council, and getting some stakeholders together and figure out what can be really done to help make solar work for the public again. Because we live in a solar state, we live in a solar city. Solar should be working for the public, and we shouldn't be beholden to the utility providers to dictating if it's helping us or hurting us. With that being said, maybe sometime in the future, maybe sometime down the road, we'll see some great things that will help us break away from our normal utility providers. Maybe like the Tesla house battery will really happen. Maybe solar shingles will really happen. I'd like to see that. I know it's been talked about and like what Elon Musk might bring us in the future and this and that, but we can't wait forever. And right now, we really do have to have some deep and serious conversations with our utility providers about this.
Thank you.
Yes, so it's kind of shocking to me that New Jersey has a better solar energy policy than Arizona does. So I think this is something that we really need to pay attention to. It's a policy question. And I don't know if most people know, but there's actually a board for SRP that people run for, and you want to advocate for solar candidates who believe in solar energy and who will set solar policy that we can adopt as residents. And I think this is something that I've certainly supported in this election. There's actually an SRP board election coming up in April. And, but this is something that residents don't know a ton about. This is something that you actually need to request a ballot from SRP to elect the solar candidates. And this is something that people should be mindful of. And so if it's a policy question, elect the people that will set the positive solar policy that you want to see in your community. And I think that as far as the right percentage, because I know that didn't specifically answer the question, but I don't really know that there is a right percentage of loss. I think it's more a policy question.
Thank you.
I don't think that we can install solar panels at a loss. We are responsible in the government to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. And sometimes you have to wait for things to evolve before you can install the solar if we continue to keep losing money on installations. Obviously, we have to acknowledge the triple bottom line, the people, planet, and profit. And if it's off course, then we need to wait until we get changes from our representatives and SRP board and things like that, where we can change the way solar panels are designed and financed.
Thank you.
I mean, just to clarify, we're talking about a loss for the individual, the homeowner taking a loss. Is that
The city, I think.
or the city?
City.
The city. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify the question.
This is for city solar installation.
City solar installation. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to answer in terms of an actual percentage, but I think overall the whole point of using solar is that there's not a long-term loss. So I think you have to kind of assess the data. Is there a short-term loss, and what is it? But a huge long-term gain ultimately, and how long is long-term? So I think the data is really important here. I'm sure that's not. You're probably, whoever asked this question is frustrated that none of us are giving you an exact number, and I apologize for that. As a lawyer, I always want to answer the question. But yeah, I think the data is super important here because it can't just be it can't just be looking at a singular moment and what is the percentage of loss. It has to be looking at the long term and what are the benefits to the city. But overall, I think you would not want to see a loss long term, and you'd want to see savings.
Thank you.
Well, that's an easy question because we don't have to lose anything to install solar in the city and do. We already, we're not saving as much as we did before. You know, we're looking at life cycle. We're not saving as much, but we're definitely saving. And Grace Kelly, who is our energy efficiency expert, she was able to actually negotiate deals that were better than ASU's. So shout out to Grace Kelly. And, you know, but even if it were even, I'd say, look at taking us off coal is going to create a healthier community. There's a lot of associated deaths and respiratory illness with coal production and with, you know, coal being the major source of energy. I want to take some time, though, to talk about some alternative facts that we've heard here tonight. And one is about our water quality. So we had EPA raise their standards, and we had, because of that, we had a one-day exceedance of a certain cleaning chemical. It was flushed out within 48 hours, and we have periodic, you know, baseline assessments. We have amongst the healthiest and cleanest of water. Dave McNeil is our water manager and water quality manager, and it's a disrespectful thing to say what's been said here tonight. The other thing is fire hydrants. We have less than 1%, 0.7% of our fire hydrants have work orders on them now. The Tempe City Council voted last June in our budget to authorize 2 staff members who are checking every single, I think there's 9,000 fire hydrants in the city. So we have a very vigorous assessment program of our fire hydrants, and the fire that was in question was not at all impacted by the fire hydrants that weren't working. So let's clear, make sure that we talk, you know, in a factual way and not fear-monger the community, because there's enough division in our city. We need to bring people together, and it doesn't help if we disrespect the staff and present incorrect information. It doesn't do a good service to the staff. You have to work with staff when you're a council member. You need to be able to find common ground. So it's important that we accurately present the issues that are before us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm going to change the wording of this next answer ever so slightly for the person who wrote it. And we're going to begin with Ms. Vega.
Okay.
What role do you see sustainability playing in building and construction, which is one of the largest contributions to greenhouse gas emissions?
Huge. I mean, so it's something we absolutely have to have this conversation. And I think we are seeing a slight change in the way construction is being handled. And I think this is one area where we need to be mindful of things like air quality and you know, how we construct our buildings. They can't all be large glass structures because that just contributes to our urban heat island. You know, actually putting part of our, I believe that when we have our character area conversation, that one of the things we need to do is not just say we don't want to see this in our community. It's about what we do want to see in our community. So we want to see a percentage that's green space. We want to see materials that are sustainable. We want to see, you know, things that are going to contribute to the overall well-being of the community that a development is happening in. I think that's something we can build into the design process. So that, and frankly, I think that's good for the construction and the trades and the builders as well, the developers, to be able to know going into a community what to expect. What do we want to see as part of our community? And that, I think, shortens the process too. Because I think when you have very ambiguous standards, I think that makes it harder from the business side of things to be able to know what to expect when they come to Tempe, because there might be changes that happen at the last minute. And so when we focus on improving the process, making it more transparent, I think that's something that we will see in the long term. Good for the residents to be able to have the input on what they want to see in their community. Good from the building and the developer side of things to know what is wanted in those communities, and that'll shorten the process and improve the development process overall.
Thank you.
Yes, I would encourage them to use recycled products and also to partner with city resources. We do have great city staff, and they can help with the design and making sure that they use good, sustainable, long-term products. The developers, too, have been very open to sustainability practices in Tempe. They're very progressive, and they want help, and they want to make it better for the environment.
Yeah, I think it's super important. I think part of it is working with developers and educating those that may not know about all of the benefits that we talked about before, lessening costs over time, et cetera. So that's part of it. I think incentivizing green building is really important. And I think sustainable practices in general, we've talked about how sustainability isn't necessarily just environmental, and so that can also relate to, I know this wasn't the exact question about greenhouse gas emissions, but about who's building the building. And I know the Tempe City Council has worked on that for development deals and who's actually building your building, and making sure that the workers are paid and not just paid, adequately paid. And so that there's equity and sustainable practices in general when you're talking about new development.
So sadly, not a lot of developers are actually eager to adopt sustainable building practices. And to me, it's not about LEED building also. It's about how a building performs and behaves after it's built. It's really important to make that distinction. And from the time I got on council, I wanted us to adopt the latest International Energy Conservation Code. Currently, we're operating under the 2012 law code. Scottsdale adopted 2015. I said, let's adopt 2015. But we've been working slowly and steadily, and now we've decided we're going to adopt the 2017 International Energy Conservation Code, which was just released. It's not an easy thing to do, though. You have to work hand in hand with the developers and construction workers, construction outfits, and with other cities. So we're going to work with East Valley cities to move forward in a very process-driven way to get us to the International Energy Conservation Code of 2017, which is going to have a lot of requirements to require developers to really build in a more green way. We are seeing some visionary developers out there, and I champion those whenever I can. And thank you for bringing up the point about sustainability and equity and trying to develop a workforce. I've made it a charge that every developer I talk to, I say, what is your plan for your workers? Are you going to hire local workers? Are you going to hire workers who come from apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship programs that actually graduate journeymen? Because it's important that we have skilled workers. In the case of the Barrett Honors College, they went with an outfit that did not have skilled workers. 500 water leaks sprung from that. They had to bring the trades in, a union company. They had to bring the trades in to patch up those leaks. It was a $3 million cost. The students had to be moved into a hotel. This is what happens when you don't have good jobs that pay well and that have highly skilled workers. So I fought for that with Omni Project and with the project that's to the Tempe Center for the Arts, the biomedical campus. It's the first time in Tempe history we had that guarantee from the developers, and that is about sustainability. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Mr. Stewart.
One of the things that I look at right now is, like, we have so many developers that are coming in looking for, they're looking for zoning upgrades, they're looking for PAD overlays, they're looking for various ways to get the most they can get from their property and get the most money from their property. And I think we just have to negotiate very, very, very hard with them to make sure that they're including some of these green practices and more environmentally savvy practices that are available. That's one of the first solutions I have. Another one is we definitely have to work for, we definitely have to revise the development codes, take another look at them, and really add some stronger words to it, some stronger teeth, and really look at the development codes and see what we can do to improve sustainability in there and, like, green ways. I would be really open to seeing on our development review committee finding a spot for someone from the Sustainable Commission, like move someone over there from the Sustainable Commission that's already on there, move them to the DRC, because the DRC right now is made up of architects and city planners and a few neighbors, I think like one neighbor, and I think we really need to look at, if we're going to move forward with that, get a green expert on there to really, like, put screws to some of these developers about, like, what are you really doing outside of being lead? And what are you really doing with environmental justice here? We have the urban core plan coming up for the next 18 months. I think it's a great opportunity for city staff and for council to really talk to our consulting firm that we have doing this urban core, which is going to help develop a new plan for the upper third of Tempe to really install some green practices. We have a great opportunity to do that with the urban core. It's a big mystery right now what it's going to look like, and it's just starting to get going. And before it gets going too hard, be a great chance to get in there and do that.
Thank you.
All right. So this one's for you, Ms. Adams. Those who opposed bike infrastructure on McClintock and the Seat route cited that the percentage who bike to work should not have their needs met. Other groups that are similar percentage in Tempe are the elderly, veterans, children under 5, people with disabilities. At what percentage or size does a group's need matter for city investments, and why?
Well, I think the city investments need to really make sense. They need to pencil out in all ways. So the bike lane on McClintock, for example, the neighborhoods were not empowered in the decision on that process. It's part of a plan, the 2040 plan, but it wasn't something the neighbors were made aware of in advance. And I think that was a big problem with the bike lane. I'm supportive of bike lanes, but we need to make sure that we reach out to the neighborhoods and see what they want. Does it work for them? Is it safe? Many of those residents have felt like it's a lot more dangerous situation. They've seen the bicyclists almost get hit because people aren't paying attention. And it's also been a very expensive investment. It was $1.5 million to put the bike lane in, and then they determined that it hasn't been working very well. And it's going to be $3.5 million to add another lane back. So that doesn't sound like a good decision. So I think we need to maybe slow down when we make these decisions and make sure that we are very methodical about what do they need, how many bicyclists do ride that route, is it practical for that area of town. Where you have high density parts of town, the bicyclists make sense because it's high density, we have good bike routes, and a lot of people are using them. So the bike routes can be done. I think that was actually kind of poor planning on our part and poor implementation. So, but we can do it, we can make it work, but we need to really make sure we include the neighborhoods on the decision-making processes.
Thank you.
One voice matters. One person matters. So I took your question, whoever's question it was, to be, I guess, a little broader than the bike lanes. And I think that's something that I'd like to bring to the council, is just that everybody matters in Tempe, rich or poor, young or old. And so but part of it is, what does a voice mean? What does having a voice mean? And I think all of you that are here, it's wonderful. There are a lot of people who aren't here. There are a lot of people who don't necessarily feel they have a voice or can't use their voice. And so I think it's the role of a council member to go out in the community and listen to those who don't customarily have a voice and are underrepresented. And sometimes that means a handful of people only who might bring forward an issue that the council was unaware of. So that's really at the heart of why I'm running, that it doesn't necessarily need to be a certain percentage to matter. Each of us matter. But also, data matters. Data, facts. So I think when you're making policy change that affects thousands and thousands of people, you have to look at data. So one voice can bring forward an issue, and then the council has the responsibility to analyze the data and determine what the best way forward is. And that obviously should include a long process of community input. But I'd really like to see the council going into the community and talking to people that they don't normally hear from. That's really important to me.
Thank you.
So one quick correction, the repaving project in McClintock, it was 3 lanes and went to all 2 lanes. It was not in the millions of dollars it cost. It was $160,000. It was done as part of a repaving project, so just wanted to correct the record there. Fundamentally, bike lanes are about public safety, because if every pedestrian and every driver and every bike rider is not safe on the roads, then no one is safe. And that's why we've adopted, the city of Tempe, first in Arizona, to adopt Vision Zero. And we're saying we want no more deaths from on the bike, in your car, or walking. And we're committed to this. We have incredibly great professional staff. Julian Dressang is our traffic engineer. And you know, they designed the bike lanes, and we did kind of a poor man's bike lane, let's be real. You know, we could have made safer bike lanes with bike tracks. In hindsight, that was probably a mistake, but I lay that on council, not on our staff. And I know our Transportation Commission was incredibly supportive of the bike lanes. Even with all the brouhaha, they said, status quo, don't change, don't spend 3 million to add, we're adding a lane back in sections, not everywhere. We're actually adding a lane back where there is less of a slowdown in traffic, where there was a higher, where there was more slowdown in traffic. We're not putting the lanes back. There wasn't nearly as much opposition, so it was very interesting in that way. But we can never do enough education, and that's why Genevieve Vega and I had the first ever bike canvas last week, and we didn't just take around our materials and our literature. We took bike education pamphlets to educate people, because bikers need to be educated, especially early school age kids and high school kids. ASU students need to be educated in the rules of the road, and so do drivers, because often drivers, they'll see a bike coming on the opposite side of the road in a sidewalk, and that's how we have so many accidents and fatalities. It's really important to know that McClintock bike lanes are a safety feature, and my solemn pledge and responsibility is to keep Tempe safe for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, wow. The emotionalism from like Sarah and Lauren right there just really got me choked up for a second here, because I have some connections to McClintock, and if you want to talk to me about that later, I can talk to you about it personally. So a few days ago, it was discovered, unfortunately, that there is in the news something about the Strava heat map leak, which kind of got our military kind of in some trouble, little concerns about privacy and security. You might want to look it up, but first thing I did when I heard about it was, I'm going to look up the Strava heat map to see like what's going on. And one of the things you can, like, for those that don't know, Strava is a fitness device, much like the Fitbit I wear, that tracks what you do. You run, you jump, you walk, or try to lose weight. I went right to the Strava heat map to see what the controversy is about, and looked up biking. And just out of curiosity, you can see who's biking the most everywhere. And I was amazed. I went over to the McClintock, is the first place I went, to see how bright and bike activity it is on McClintock compared to the surrounding areas. I took a screenshot of it. I sent it to my wife, and I'm just like, look at this. I mean, everyone says there's no one on McClintock ever biking and stuff, but look at this heat map. It was amazing, and it's one of those things that I never like really thought about. So, I mean, with that being said, obviously it is being used by, I do agree that there has to be input on all this, but, I mean, it's all about what was mentioned about education with drivers and bicyclists. More education, we can be safer. I had a brief meeting with some bicycle activists a few days ago and stuff, and I'm hoping to see Mitchell Park Neighborhood Association being one of the first neighborhoods to offer some sort of biking and driving class tied together, and I'm hoping that will move forward and be a good pilot program and see where we can go throughout the city with that. And I thank them for even approaching me.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Vega.
Yes, thank you. I think we can say up front that there's no such thing as too much communication and education. So again, I think this is educating cyclists, pedestrians, motorists, and it does come down to safety, and there is a cost factor there. I believe, and someone can check my math, I believe about 6% of Tempe is bikes on a regular basis, but it's only about 1% of our infrastructure.
4% and 1.6% of our infrastructure.
Yeah, so less than the percentage who use the bike, who are avid cyclists. That percentage is being spent on that community. So I think there's a case to be made that we need bicycle infrastructure, and there's a worthwhile cause there. That Vision Zero and the design of the McClintock bike lanes, I personally would have loved to see them be the green bike lanes too. I think those are more visible and easy to understand. But buffered bike lanes are safer for cars and cyclists as well. And I think there's another number out there that mid-block crashes have decreased almost 30% when you have a consistent 2 lanes going down McClintock. And we have to be mindful, taken at a 20,000-foot view, what else has been going on in the city that would cause the traffic? We had State Farm moving in. We had new businesses coming in South Tempe. There was also a ton of construction going on the 101 when those bike lanes were first implemented. I had a classmate. I was in my executive MBA program at the time. He worked for ADOT, and that's all I'll say about it, so I don't want to identify him here. But he came into class laughing, and he was like, oh my gosh, I heard about all this traffic and everyone's upset about the bike lanes on McClintock. And he was like, and we've got all these construction projects going on the 101. And so everybody's taking the arterial roads to get to where they need to go. So I think it's a more holistic picture that we need to look at. Sometimes we need to take a step back, a step up, and look at kind of the whole picture instead of zeroing in on, you know, maybe one cause that we think might be it, and just be mindful of that.
Thank you.
Ms. Adams.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, yes. Those who opposed bike infrastructure on
Answer
McClintock.
that
Oh, that
question.
one.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We are on to the next question.
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Cater, we'll go on with you. Yeah, no.
Wait, I just started the last one, didn't I? Oh, she did?
Yeah,
Okay, I can't
sorry
go
about
anywhere.
that. These aren't our questions. The next question from the audience is, a changing climate is the result of greenhouse gas pollutants increasing in our atmosphere. What kinds of nonpartisan solutions to our air pollution problem would you actively support at all levels of government?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I really do think this is probably the biggest issue of our time. And that's scary. And it means that we have to make policy change at every level. Obviously, I'm running for Tempe City Council, and so the question is, what can Tempe do? And I think we just have to be really innovative and look at the data and implement policies that are going to work. I think the city has to focus on things that are actually happening in the city. But raising my family here, this is something that's really important to me. And again, I think Tempe has been a champion for this already, and I would just like to see that continue.
It's a big question. Well, it doesn't help when our president tries to advocate for a solar tariff. That's not going to help the renewable energy, and especially when solar energy is historically cheap. So I could talk a lot about the federal response, but I'll focus more on local issues. We need to have a climate action plan, and we've signed on to the Mayor's Covenant, and we have pledged that we'll do a climate action plan. Part of that was doing a greenhouse gas inventory of our community and our city, and we've done that with ASU, with ASU's help with students from the School of Sustainability. And we're going to be involving all of our citizens in a discussion about our climate action plan, what that will mean. One of the things we need to do is we need to electrify our fleet of vehicles that we have for the city, but also encourage electric cars. We can do that by installing new car charging stations. SRP now is a $500 rebate on a port for commercial purposes, not home use, but we need to electrify our fleet. And that's just one part of it. We need to get rid of our food deserts and encourage more sustainable food systems. That's what Sing Meadows is about. That's what the community gardens that are being built, Friendship Village and Evergreen Park. It's about creating a more sustainable food system. It's about recognizing that there's a nexus between energy and water and working innovative ways. Like one way we can do that is with developers. We can say, if you're going to use more water, we want you to help fund a nonprofit and help them become more energy efficient, water efficient. That's happening in San Francisco and other cities around the country, and we can do that as well. So there's a whole host of things, and I'm really excited to know that the citizens are going to be participating in this discussion about what should Tempe's climate action plan be, because I am sorry, all of you students out there, I am from the generation that created this mess, and I want to continue to be part of the generation that will help us get out of this mess.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, right now we're looking at, I think it's either 2040 or 2050 that Phoenix could very well be inhabitable if we don't make some changes very quickly here. I think they were talking about 135-degree temperatures, the latest studies that were coming out. So obviously, it's going to be coming down to the cities and forming coalitions with cities. I would really like to see some valley-wide 501c4 formed to help us get some power at a state level and even possibly state level or even possibly a federal level. It took 4 communities many years ago to form the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. And, it might be time to start something to do with global warming, find 4 cities that are willing to put it in together and form a 501c4 to help them lobby at a state and federal level and find common grounds and become a place of communication. Because Tempe can be a visionary all they want, and I applaud them, and they have been. But we need to get the other cities in the valley on board with it too, in whatever way possible. And I think that type of coalition and forming some sort of group like that is the way to the future to help us out with that.
Ms. Vega.
Yes, so the question mentioned something particular about nonpartisan. Can you repeat that very end of the question, please?
So what kinds of nonpartisan solutions to our air pollution problem would you actively support at all levels of government?
So the first thing I want to say is the air doesn't care what your party registration is to affect you physically. And so I want to be mindful of this. It shouldn't be a partisan issue to take care of our environment. It shouldn't be a partisan issue to take care of our children and make sure they're not getting asthma because of the poor air quality. As much as I'm gonna call out my dad without pointing to him, as much as he wants to burn a fire on Christmas morning, he doesn't if it's a no-burn day because he knows that's the right thing to do for the environment. So I just want to kind of dispel the partisanship idea here. We also know that there's a projection, and I forget the exact number, where almost a third of the year is going to be over 110 degrees unless we do something to change our behavior. So I think incentivizing hydroelectric vehicles as one example, making sure our buses are going in that way. There was just a new company, and I can't remember what it's called, who's headquartering in Arizona, and they're going to be building hydroelectric trucks. And so this is something we should be able to capitalize on this, especially since it'll be a local company. And I also think there's small things that I think of things like the little free library where we have incentives and rebates for that. What if we had incentives and rebates for community gardens, like I think Lauren mentioned, and incentives and rebates for seed exchanges and plant exchanges and clippings and fruit exchanges and things like that. Those are very small community things that we can do that I think have a big impact and kind of encourage not only the sense of neighborhood and community, but also improve our environment and our air quality.
Ms. Adams.
Yes, I think everyone wants to have better air. I don't think that has to do anything with what party you're affiliated with. We can use alternative fuel vehicles, increase those, more solar panels, light rail, use our buses, walk more. We can all get in better shape if we do that. We need to have more rapid charge stations so people can drive the fuel economic vehicles and be able to charge their cars easily. I think we need to partner very closely with ASU because they are so good at the latest innovations and really continue to have that close interaction with them. We need to plant more trees, decrease our water shortage, bike more, and partner with all cities, and also promote gardens in our backyards or wherever they may be, so we don't have to use more fuel to transport fruits and vegetables and products.
Thank you.
All right. This will be our last question.
From the audience.
From the audience. All right, I'm a student at the School of Sustainability. I'm glad many of you have brought up justice, as this is vital for a sustainable community. Local government is a great intervention point to champion issues of equity. With that, which initiatives are you most excited about that the city is doing or other cities are doing that promote a green, fair, and just society?
Ms. Kuby, we'll begin with you.
Well, I'd say our equal pay program, it's considered by the American Association of University Women to be the best program in the country. And I was presenting on it in New York and was approached by a New York council member to say, we need to see your ordinance because we need to learn from Tempe, and that was quite an honor. And I worked on that with Robin Arredondo Savage. It took us 2 years to do it. It wasn't easy because Robin said, slow down, girl, and let's go talk to some businesses. Let's beta test this. Let's see if there's any other ways we can get to this certification process. And we opened up that process, and fundamentally it was so much better because of it. I learned a real life lesson from Robin. And then the other, I think, equity issue that I'm really proud of is the free pre-K program. So we opened up 20 classrooms with 18 students, and this isn't just any old pre-K. This is high-quality pre-K with a child development, a graduate who has a degree in child development, and a teaching aide. And it's not just the pre-K, it's the before-school care, and it's after school, and it's the entire summer. This is changing people's lives, and I know it is because I've met people at the door who tell me This one woman said, you know, my son, I always knew where he was every day. I would drop him off at a different place, but now I know he's not necessarily just watching television. He's reading, he's playing with other kids, and he'll be more ready for kindergarten, because 2/3 of our kids are not ready for kindergarten. That's why we stepped in, because the state wasn't doing it. We decided we'd step in because fundamentally an investment in our kids is an investment in Tempe's future. So to me, the equity aspect of sustainability is so important, and there's costs that that incurred, but the long-term benefit is enormous. And with pre-K, we're testing this out, we're studying, ASU is studying the process, and we're gonna probably come back to the voters and say, do you wanna invest in this and make it even bigger program? So I'm really proud of that. There's a lot more that we can do, though. We can't stop. 21% of our families are in poverty, and 31% of our kids live in poverty in Tempe. We only fund 1 of every 10 emergency rental voucher, rental requests, so we need to do better. Thank you.
In regards to the city of Tempe, the two that have impressed me the most, that I'm most excited for, I'm excited for both the 100% renewable energy push, and I'm excited for the pre-K. They're both extreme. What impresses me about both of the programs, besides the benefits that could come, like as Lauren explained, all the benefits with the pre-K that we are going to have immediately and we're already seeing, and what we could have with the 100% renewable energy, is what excites me about it is it took guts, it took innovation, it took a lot of gall and saying we're going to do this. It's not wishy-washy, you know, and especially what the pre-K program ended up being. I mean, the original vision for it was way less than what City Council ended up passing, and that just takes all sorts of like applause, and it showed real guts, and I think that's exciting to see when City Council comes to the table and they say like we're going to take a stand and we're going to do something really important, and I'd really like to be a part of that and bring some other initiatives and say like, listen, this is what I believe in, and this is what's good, and this is what we all should believe in, and help everyone in the community and take a real stand, because right now there's too many ways where people aren't taking stands, or they're saying we can't do this because it's of this, it's too hard, or it's too scary, or, you know, and we need to stop hiding behind things, and that's why I really applaud these two programs, because they took a stand, and I'm really proud of Tempe for doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Vega.
Thank you. Yes, I think Tempe has been incredibly generous when it comes to a lot of programs. And I would give kudos to Councilmember Cubie, because she has spearheaded quite a lot of efforts, particularly related to sustainability. The ones I want to focus on are human service related in particular. Tempe is the most generous municipality in the Valley. It might be the state in how much we spend on human services, and that includes disability services, senior and at-risk youth services. It includes domestic violence survivors and the working poor. So Tempe has been incredibly generous in this area. I'm on the Tempe Community Council Board of Directors, and we actually, through an agency review process, which I encourage everybody in the audience and watching to volunteer at least once. You actually assess the nonprofits in Tempe, and the people who participate in agency review make recommendations to the council on how to spend their human services dollars. So this is a community-driven effort that was championed by Harry Mitchell, oh my gosh, 25, 30 years ago or more. And it's something that's right here, a part of Tempe, and I'm proud to be serving my second term on that board. We just had a retreat talking about the community needs and how we can not only incubate, support the programs that are in existence, but also where we need to make partnerships with, where we can delegate as well. But something I think I really want to see in the future, and this is a personal issue for me, is I would like to see special needs after school care for children in Tempe. My daughter was kicked out of multiple after school programs for undiagnosed special needs, and this is something I would like to see change and improve in Tempe. Thank you.
I spent 14 years in community services when I first started with the city of Tempe. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training, so helping others is near and dear to my heart. And I think that we need to decrease our poverty rate in Tempe. It's really frightening how high it is, and we need to partner with businesses and the community to help with social justice issues. We also need to have very livable communities which help all, including the people with the disabilities, the elderly, the youth, and so they have access to light rail, the buses orbit. So everyone has access to whatever needs they have, and that's how you promote a more inclusive environment for all in the city of Tempe.
I would love to see a disability initiative. Some people touched on it a little bit already. If elected, I would love to champion it. We know, in fact, most people will experience disability at some point in their lives, whether it's temporary or permanent. We know as people age, they become a person with a disability, even if they don't call it that. And we also know that the percentage of people with disabilities living in poverty is also really high. And so Tempe has done a lot of great stuff related to accessibility, but I would like it to be, it's been a leader in so many areas, I would like it to be a leader on this too. I mentioned earlier universal design, and I think that really fits really nicely with sustainability. And this could be a way to look at improving our parks in a way that are fully accessible to people with disabilities, to kids with disabilities. It could relate to after-school programs for kids with disabilities. It relates to transportation. And so I think there are a lot of ways that right now, I actually served on the City of Tempe's Disability Concerns Commission for 5 years, which is awesome. But a lot of times we look at things within the confines or the constraints of the laws that exist. And I would love Tempe to be a leader on disability rights.
Thank you very much. And thank you.